Somewhere in the ancient oceans, something was hunting that should not have existed. A predator so massive it could swallow two adult humans whole without closing its jaws. So powerful, its bite could crush a small car. So bizarre in its anatomy that everything we thought we knew about sharks was wrong. This was not just a big shark. This was Megalodon. And absolutely nothing about this creature followed the rules of biology as we understand them. For decades, scientists painted a picture of Megalodon as simply a scaled-up great white shark, a bigger, badder version of the apex predator we know today. But recent discoveries are shattering that image completely. What is emerging is a portrait of an animal so strange, so unprecedented, that it is forcing us to rewrite the entire playbook on prehistoric marine life. I am talking about a shark that gave birth to babies the size of adult humans, a predator that built nurseries across entire ocean basins, an animal whose body shape was so radically different from what we imagined that it challenges everything we thought we knew about how massive predators move through water. And here is the thing that gets me. The more we discover about Megalodon, the more impossible it seems that something like this ever existed at all. When paleontologists first started piecing together Megalodon fossils, they made what seemed like reasonable assumptions. They found teeth, massive teeth, some over 7 inches long, nearly 3 times the size of a great white's. They found vertebrae thick as dinner plates, and they did what any logical scientist would do. They scaled up the great white shark proportionally and called it a day. But that is where everything went wrong, because Megalodon was not playing by great white rules. It was not playing by anybody's rules. The first clue came from the teeth themselves. These were not just bigger versions of great white teeth. They were fundamentally different, thicker, more robust, built for a completely different kind of hunting. Where great white teeth are designed for slicing, Megalodon teeth were engineered for crushing, for grabbing prey and breaking bone, for dealing with animals so large that slicing was not enough. Then came the jaw measurements. Scientists calculated that Megalodon could open its mouth up to 3.5 meters wide. That's 11.5 feet. You could park a small car in that mouth. The bite force estimates were equally staggering. Over 180,000 newtons of pressure, 10 times stronger than a great white shark, and 3 times stronger than Tyrannosaurus rex. But here is where it gets weird. If you actually built a shark with those proportions, scaling up a great white to Megalodon's estimated size, the physics do not work. The animal would be too heavy, too cumbersome, too metabolically expensive to function in water. It would be an evolutionary dead end, swimming through the ancient oceans, burning through calories faster than it could possibly consume them. That is when researchers started looking more carefully at the vertebrae, not just their size, but their shape, their proportions. And what they found changed everything. Megalodon was not built like a great white shark at all. Instead of the torpedo-shaped body we had imagined, evidence suggests Megalodon had a much more slender profile. Longer pectoral fins, a shorter, more compact nose, a body plan that looked less like a great white and more like a massive lemon shark. This discovery is revolutionary because it completely changes how we understand Megalodon's behavior. A slender body plan suggests this was not the high-speed pursuit predator we had imagined. Instead, Megalodon was likely a slow cruiser, conserving energy between explosive bursts of speed when attacking prey. Think less like a Ferrari, more like a massive diesel truck with the occasional rocket booster. But the really abnormal part is not Megalodon's size or shape. It's how these animals reproduced. Because what happened inside a pregnant Megalodon was nothing short of a horror movie. Megalodon practiced oophagy, which means egg eating. This was not adults eating eggs. This was babies eating their unhatched siblings while still developing in the womb. Embryonic cannibalism occurred on a scale never seen before or since. Here is how it worked. A female Megalodon would produce dozens, maybe hundreds of eggs, but only a few would survive to birth. The strongest, fastest developing embryos would systematically consume their brothers and sisters, growing larger and larger inside their mother's body. By the time they were born, these baby megalodons were already over 6 feet long, bigger than most adult humans. Think about that for a moment. These sharks were giving birth to animals the size of grown people. The energetic cost alone should have been impossible. But somehow, Megalodon made it work. The reason becomes clear when you consider the world these giants inhabited. The ancient oceans were a different place entirely. Warmer waters supported biodiversity levels we can barely imagine today. Massive baleen whales, including species that no longer exist, cruised these prehistoric seas in numbers that would dwarf modern populations. For a predator like Megalodon, this was paradise. Slow-moving, energy-rich prey animals the size of school buses were just waiting to be hunted. But catching prey that massive required a completely different strategy than anything modern sharks employ. This is where Megalodon's abnormal anatomy starts to make sense. That crushing bite force was not for slicing through fish. It was for grabbing whales, for holding on to animals that could weigh 30 tons or more, for delivering bone-crushing damage that would immobilize prey too large to kill quickly. The slender, energy-efficient body plan suddenly makes sense too. Megalodon did not need to chase down fast prey. It needed to be efficient, to patrol vast territories looking for whale pods, and to conserve energy for those explosive attacks when the perfect opportunity presented itself. And here's something that blew my mind when I first learned about it. Megalodon did not just hunt randomly across the oceans. These animals had a global network of nurseries, protected areas where young megalodons could grow up safely, away from the dangers of the open ocean. Scientists have identified at least 5 of these nursery sites, stretching from Panama to the Canary Islands, from Maryland to Florida. These were not accidental gathering spots. They were carefully chosen habitats, shallow protected bays and estuaries rich with smaller prey, safe zones where baby megalodons, already the size of adult humans, could spend their early years learning to hunt without competing with full-grown adults. The fact that these nurseries existed at all suggests something remarkable about megalodon intelligence and social behavior. These animals had complex life histories, migration patterns, and possibly even cultural knowledge passed down through generations about where to give birth and raise young. The existence of this nursery network reveals something even more extraordinary about megalodon behavior. These were not just random feeding grounds. They were sophisticated childcare systems that operated across millions of years. Some of these nurseries date back 16 million years, while others were active as recently as 3 million years ago. That is a parenting strategy that remained stable for over 10 million years. But here is what makes this truly bizarre. Modern sharks, even great whites, do not exhibit this level of parental investment. Most sharks give birth and immediately abandon their young to fend for themselves. The ocean is brutal and survival rates are low. But Megalodon developed something completely different, a system that ensured their massive offspring had the best possible chance of reaching adulthood. And when you think about the logistics involved, it becomes even more incredible. Adult female megalodons, some reaching lengths of 70 feet or more, had to navigate across entire ocean basins to reach these specific nursery sites. They had to time their pregnancies with seasonal migrations. They had to remember locations across thousands of miles of open water. This suggests spatial memory and navigation abilities that we are only beginning to understand in modern marine animals. The young megalodons themselves face challenges no other shark species has ever encountered. Born at 6 feet long, they were already apex predators in their nursery environments, but they were also growing at rates that defied biological logic. Examination of growth rings in megalodon vertebrae suggests these animals could add several feet of length each year during their juvenile phase. That kind of growth rate requires enormous amounts of food. And here is where the nursery locations become crucial. Each site was chosen not just for safety, but for abundance. Rich feeding grounds where young megalodons could hunt smaller whales, large fish, and other marine life without having to venture into the dangerous open ocean. But even with these advantages, life as a young megalodon was precarious. Evidence suggests that juvenile mortality rates were still significant. The ocean was filled with other predators, including adult megalodons who would not hesitate to cannibalize smaller members of their own species. Size was everything, and growing fast enough to escape predation was literally a matter of life and death. The adults faced their own unique challenges. Maintaining a body mass of up to 65 tons in the ocean requires a constant input of calories. Scientists estimate that an adult megalodon needed to consume roughly 2,000 pounds of food every single day just to maintain basic metabolic functions. That is equivalent to eating an entire small whale daily. This brings us to perhaps the most abnormal aspect of megalodon ecology. These animals were not just opportunistic feeders, they were ecosystem engineers. Their presence shaped the behavior of every other marine animal in their territory. Whale populations developed migration patterns specifically to avoid megalodon hunting grounds. Smaller predators learned to follow in megalodons' wake, feeding on scraps from massive kills. The relationship between megalodons and their prey was unlike anything we see in modern oceans. Today's great whites are ambush predators that rely on surprise attacks. But megalodons' hunting strategy was completely different. Their massive size meant stealth was impossible. Instead, they likely relied on endurance and overwhelming force. Picture this scenario. A pod of ancient baleen whales, each animal 30 to 40 feet long, moving slowly through warm Miocene waters. A megalodon, nearly twice their length, approaches from below. There is no surprise attack, no sudden burst of speed. Just inevitable, crushing power as jaws the size of a garage door clamp down on the whale's midsection. The whale struggles, but it is useless. Megalodon's bite force, 10 times stronger than any predator alive today, has already crushed vital organs. The other whales in the pod scatter, but they are too slow. This single kill will feed the megalodon for days, maybe weeks. And somewhere in the distance, other marine scavengers are already detecting the chemical signals that mean food is available. This kind of predation event shaped the evolutionary pressures of the entire marine ecosystem. Prey animals had to grow larger, faster, smarter. Predators had to specialize or risk being outcompeted by these oceanic giants. The Miocene seas became an arms race of size and power, with megalodons sitting at the apex of a food web unlike anything before or since. But perhaps the most abnormal thing about Megalodon isn't what made it successful. It's how completely it disappeared. Most extinction events leave traces: gradual population declines, geographic range contractions, evolutionary adaptations to changing conditions. But Megalodon's extinction was remarkably abrupt and complete. Around 3 million years ago, something changed in the world's oceans. The exact trigger remains debated, but the effects were catastrophic for Megalodon. Ocean temperatures began dropping, sea levels shifted, and the abundant whale populations that had sustained these giants for millions of years started disappearing. But here's what's truly strange about Megalodon's extinction. It wasn't just environmental change that killed them off. Competition played a role too. Smaller, more efficient predators were evolving. Early orcas working in coordinated pods could take down the same prey that megalodons hunted alone. Great whites built for speed and efficiency rather than raw power proved more adaptable to changing conditions. The giants that had ruled the oceans for over 15 million years found themselves obsolete almost overnight. Their massive size, once their greatest advantage, became a liability in a world with fewer large prey animals and more competition from cooperative hunters. So what does Megalodon teach us about the limits of life on Earth? Here was an animal that broke every rule we thought governed marine predators. Too big to exist, yet it thrived for 15 million years. Too energy expensive to sustain, yet it dominated every ocean on the planet. Too specialized to survive change, yet it adapted to countless environmental shifts before finally meeting its match. The more we learn about Megalodon, the more it challenges our understanding of what's possible in nature. This wasn't just evolution creating a bigger shark. This was evolution experimenting with the absolute extremes of predator design, testing the boundaries of size, power, and ecological dominance in ways we're still trying to comprehend. And perhaps that's the most extraordinary thing about Megalodon. Not that it existed, but that something so impossible, so unprecedented, so utterly abnormal could rule the ancient seas for millions of years. It reminds us that Earth's history is filled with creatures that defy our expectations, that push biology to its absolute limits. The oceans may never see anything like Megalodon again, but somewhere in the deep, in fossils we haven't found yet, there are probably other impossible giants waiting to rewrite everything we think we know about life on this planet.